2 title fights, 2 heartbreaks. Despite his incredible talent, BJJ wizardry, and thunderous punches, Brian Ortega hasn't been able to take out the elites of the UFC Featherweight Division like Alex Volkanovski and Max Holloway, both of whom ruined his title aspirations by handing him a real drubbing. Does that mean Holloway and Volkanovski are simply in a different league? Or is Brian Ortega not a championship-level fighter? Let's recap T-City's MMA career to understand just how good he is. Born and raised in California to Mexican immigrants, Ortega's first foray into MMA was a trip to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Academy in Torrance at 13 years old. Ortega's father took him to the martial arts facility after fearing that he would lose himself by walking down a dark path since he had started mingling with the wrong crowd. It was at the famed BJJ Academy that Ortega's high aptitude for twisting and crushing limbs shined bright, and within no time, he became one of Renner Gracie's favorite students. Ortega's coach was so impressed with his talent that he decided to pay his tuition fee after his father wanted to stop his son's training due to his financial hardships. Within a few years, Ortega earned his BJJ black belt as well as his T-City moniker, thanks to his mastery of the triangle choke. At 17 years old, Ortega teamed up with boxing coach James Lurson, who helped enhance his striking abilities alongside the groundwork he was learning from Gracie. A couple of years later, Ortega kicked off his career by competing in local events in Southern California, making a successful start to his career by submitting his opponent with his trademark triangle choke. Ortega continued his winning ways by securing 3 more victories, which set him up for the Respect in the Cage Featherweight Championship, which he won by a decision. A couple of wins later, he was in the UFC. Ortega was set to have his first fight in the promotion against Diego Brandao at the Ultimate Fighter Brazil 3 finale in May 2014. Unfortunately, Brandao had to withdraw from the bout due to an injury in the days leading up to the event. A couple of months later, Ortega made his debut against Mike De La Torre, who got dominated and submitted by a rear naked choke in a minute and a half. It was a perfect start to T-City's UFC career. But things went south a few days later when he tested positive for drostanolone during a post-fight screening. As a result, the win was turned into a no contest and Ortega was fined $2,500 and suspended for 9 months. Following the doping controversy, Ortega returned to the cage against Thiago Tavares. In round 1, Tavares started strong with a right hand, head kick, and a quick takedown. Ortega attempted an armbar and later a triangle choke, but Tavares defended well. The Brazilian responded with ground and pound, while Ortega cut him with an elbow and threatened with an armbar. Tavares got back to his feet and scored another takedown before the round ended. Round 2 saw Tavares sticking to takedowns and ground and pound. In round 3, Ortega dominated with his fists of fury, dropping Tavares and securing the win by a TKO. 7 months later, Ortega faced Diego Brandao, who dominated the young Mexican for 2 rounds with his striking prowess and ground and pound, but a momentary lapse in concentration cost him dearly. Early in the 3rd round, Brandao momentarily turned his back after a striking exchange, exposing his neck. Ortega swiftly secured his opponent's neck and attempted a guillotine choke from mount. When that didn't secure the victory, Ortega masterfully transitioned into a triangle choke and cut off the blood supply to earn his 2nd UFC win. Ortega's wild run in the UFC Featherweight Division continued against Clay Guida. For nearly 3 rounds, Guida frustrated and outworked Ortega with his fiery striking and grappling, But just as it looked like Ortega's O was about to go, he pulled off a miraculous knee strike that melted the UFC veteran with only 20 seconds to go. The fight once again proved that while Ortega can be down, he's never really out. He is always pressing forward, hoping to do the unthinkable, and that is exactly what he did when the Mexican-American faced Renato Moicano. The two high-octane featherweights engaged in a striking battle for almost 2.5 rounds, with the sounds resonating as much as the visuals for those at cage side. However, Moicano made a questionable choice by attempting a takedown late in the third, playing right into Ortega's submission expertise. Ortega, being the ultimate opportunist that he is, capitalized on Moicano's mistake, locking in a guillotine choke and securing the finish at 2 minutes and 59 seconds. With 4 wins in the UFC, Ortega faced a step up in competition in the form of Cub Swanson. The initial phase of the fight involved a lengthy feeling out process, with both fighters avoiding taking significant chances in the first half of the opening frame. Swanson became more aggressive and outworked Ortega in stand-up as the fight progressed. With 20 seconds remaining, however, Ortega secured a tight choke, although he wasn't able to force a tap before the buzzer. In round 2, Ortega pressed Swanson and went toe-to-toe and blow for blow with the veteran. With 2 minutes left, Ortega secured Swanson's neck in a guillotine and jumped guard. The choke was extremely tight and Swanson had no option but to tap out. A few months later, Ortega faced former UFC lightweight champion Frankie Edgar in a featherweight title eliminator. As soon as the opening bell rang, Edgar took charge and applied pressure on Ortega. His right hand as well as leg kicks and body shots found their mark a number of times. Making the most of his height and reach advantage, Ortega focused on establishing his jab and utilizing reach, while Edgar weaved in and out with adept head movements and footwork. Towards the end of the first round, as Edgar closed the distance, Ortega connected with a damaging elbow that hurt Edgar, who covered up and clinched to try and survive. Seizing the opportunity, Ortega measured his distance and unleashed an uppercut that snapped Edgar's head back, causing him to crash to the canvas. Without wasting any time, Ortega sent Edgar to the Shadow Realm with a couple of big hammer fists. With that victory, Ortega earned a shot at Max Holloway's featherweight title, but he suffered a vicious beating at the hands of the Hawaiian. Ortega failed to secure takedowns and Holloway blasted him with his boxing to earn a landslide unanimous decision. Holloway's beating was so bad that Ortega stayed out of action for 2 years, mainly due to injuries, but he eventually bounced back by dominating the Korean Zombie and earning a title shot against Alex Volkanovski. Throughout their fight, the Aussie controlled his opponent with his nippy striking and Greco-Roman wrestling, with Ortega's best round being the fight's third, when he locked in a couple of fight-ending submissions that Volk miraculously pulled himself out of. Nevertheless, Ortega's gritty submission attempts weren't enough to earn him the victory. 8 months later, things went from bad to worse for Ortega as he lost by TKO after dislocating his shoulder against Yair Rodriguez. Brian Ortega has beaten a few big names in the featherweight division, but his losses against Holloway, Volkanovski, and Rodriguez cast a shadow over his status in the division, with many fans believing that maybe he's not good enough. Yet, at only 32 years old, Ortega has enough time to prove his critics wrong and use his world-class BJJ and powerful striking to reach the highest of highs in MMA. The question is, can he turn his wheels of fortune when he faces Yair Rodriguez in a few weeks? Share your thoughts, predictions, and opinions in the comments section below. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and ring that notification bell to stay in the loop on all things combat sports. Stay tuned, fight fans.